Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the ICBA CAST live on Facebook, available soon as a podcast, wherever fine podcasts are sold. My name is Jordan Bateman. I'm the Director of Communications for the Independent Contractors and Business Association, joined as always by
Chris Gardner, President of ICBA.
El Presidente. And Chris, we have a great guest today. Really happy to have Stephanie Cadieux, the MLA for Surrey South, here with us. Now the opposition critic for advanced education, but formerly a minister of 4 different portfolios.
Yep.
Name them. No, I'm just kidding.
She could name them.
Yeah, I'm saying, but you hold the distinction of being the longest serving Minister of Children and Family Development in Canadian history.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. Prove us wrong. Fact check the Rob Shaw book if that is not the case. For 42 years, ICBA has been the voice of the Canadian construction and responsible resource development industries, a relentless and passionate advocate for free enterprise. This morning, 250,000 people across British Columbia got up, went to work in construction, contributing 9% of BC's economy. Here on the ICBA CAST, we talk about the issues that are important to them, the issues that keep them working and building this province. We talk about BC politics and economic issues, always from our free enterprise, free market perspective. Lots to talk about here. There's only one issue dominating the national media, the provincial media, the regional media, the social media, and that, of course, is Kinder Morgan's deadline. Chris, maybe recap on Sunday what Kinder Morgan announced, and then maybe we can kind of run through the week.
Yeah, Kinder Morgan, as I think all of our viewers are familiar with, it's a $7.4 billion investment in our energy economy. It's a project that went through an extensive 4-year review process. The independent federal regulator approved it. The province of the day that Stephanie was a part of, the provincial government, signed off on the project. And then Prime Minister Trudeau and his cabinet considered it, and they approved the project, subject to 195 conditions. There's no jurisdiction in the world that harnesses its natural resources as sustainably and safely as Canada. This is a great project, a great opportunity for Canada. The challenge is, in Canada's energy sector, project after project has been delayed or cancelled. And the energy sector really is on its knees. The World Bank of Canada's CEO said last week capital is leaving Canada, and this is one of the reasons why. Kinder Morgan on the weekend announced that suspending all funding that's non-essential. And until they get clarity on the future of this project, they're not going to invest any more dollars. And they imposed a deadline. If they don't have clarity by the end of May, this project is in all likelihood going to be cancelled. And that would be a tremendous blow to our economy.
Yeah. So, Stephanie, you were in question period 4 times this week. BC Liberal opposition hammering away at various ministers, although John Horgan seemed to be the only one who wanted to talk about the file. Maybe he's the only one who trusts himself on the file. Lord knows what George Heyman would say. What was your perception of those questions, and what did we learn through question period and estimates as well?
Well, I think what we know is that all the way along, the NDP has wanted to stop this project. They want to frustrate the project. We found out through the process, through estimates and then question period this week, that of course Premier Horgan has known since taking office that stopping the project is well beyond his jurisdiction, and that he can't do that. So instead, I think they're trying to frustrate the process to the point where Kinder Morgan decides that it's no longer in their best interest. They've made a lot of comments about the fact that, it's a big Texas company and, they're standing up for British Columbians, but you got to remember, 77% of Kinder Morgan is owned by by Canadians.
That's right.
And certainly the people working on the project are Canadians and British Columbians. We've got, 30 or more First Nations that have signed on to benefit agreements and have work associated with the project, and they want to see the project continue. There's British Columbians that understand the need for getting energy both to BC and to foreign markets, and that we have a role in our economy and as the British Columbia, as the Pacific Gateway, to be that exit point for these products. And I think there's a lot more people that understand that global demand for oil is continuing to increase and production is increasing in Alberta. And that despite the fact that I think all of us as British Columbians want to see us move to a low carbon economy, alternative sources of energy, we want that. Yeah. But it's not going to happen overnight. We need to build that capacity over time. And in the meantime, there's world demand and British Columbia demand for this product.
Yeah, maybe let's piece it out a little bit here. So, Horgan is really clinging to this thing. We need a court to explain jurisdiction. And yet at the same time, he's stopped using the language about stopping Kinder Morgan because he knows he doesn't have the jurisdiction to do it. So, like, I'm perplexed. What exactly are we asking the courts to do besides rag the puck a bit before a decision comes down? Like, it doesn't make any sense, this push to try to put it to court when we know what the law says.
Well, and in fact, we know it. This is all a bunch of smoke and mirrors, because while they say they're going to put it before the courts, they haven't put it before the courts. They don't know what the question is they're going to ask. And we know that process in and of itself could take years and could be incredibly problematic. I understand they want to protect British Columbia. Everybody wants to see things done safely and well. We've done that in British Columbia for years. We're seen as leaders in so many areas in that regard. And what nobody seems to want, or what until very recently people seem to forget, is that oil's coming here no matter what. It's coming by train if it's not coming by the safer pipeline. And certainly now we're seeing them stumble over their feet trying to figure out how they're going to deal with that, given that they've already acknowledged they have no jurisdiction over rail either.
Yeah. And coming through train where you and I live and serve, I mean, Langley, rail line right through there. I've seen 3 major derailments of trains in Langley and Fort Langley over the years. We were lucky that there was nothing too scary, although you were at Britco when the one derailed in Milner, I think.
Right on our property. Right
on your property, and that took months, if not years, to clean up and get right. God forbid if there had been oil. South Surrey, major rail line. Can you imagine a train going off at White Rock Beach or Crescent? It's a horrible thing to think about. Yet these guys are pushing us towards that conclusion. Yeah.
Well, what's frustrating is that there actually isn't a question to put before the courts.
No.
This project was approved nearly 2 years ago. We need to get shovels in the ground. But the response of Premier Horgan is to start a trade war with Alberta. Right. I never thought we'd be in a situation that we would ever see Alberta drawing up legislation that would stop the export of oil and gas to British Columbia and stop BC goods at the Alberta border. That's not helpful. As Canadians, we're competing globally and internationally, and we succeed when we're together, not when we're divided. When we're divided, other countries are going to win the competition for that investment and those opportunities.
Well, and for as long as I can remember, our allies have been Alberta, Saskatchewan, and now we've got our allies, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all very vocally saying this is not okay. This is not in Canada's best interest. This is not in the best interest of our confederation. It's the Constitution's clear about where the jurisdiction for these things lies, and they did go through, and this project did go through the very extensive processes federally and provincially. Former Premier Christy Clark had the 5 conditions that had to be met for British Columbia, which landed us $1.5 billion in new and enhanced spill response for our coast and our oceans. And now we're putting the Premier is putting all of that at risk for British Columbians, and I don't believe that's in the British Columbians' best interest.
Well, the other, that's a great point, $1.5 billion commitment to protect our coasts. And I think what Premier Horgan has lost in all this is that the Port of Metro Vancouver is not his port. It's Canada's port, and businesses across this country have the right to, and they do it every single day, to export goods to markets and customers beyond our borders. That's essential for our national economy, and he doesn't get to pick and choose what goods are exported from the Port of Vancouver. That is the role of the federal government.
Absolutely.
Thank God, because he'll come for coal next. He'll come for all these other things that drive the economy. Let's bust a myth, too, on this idea that all First Nations loathe this project.
No.
More than 40 have signed benefit agreements, 35 of those in British Columbia. You're seeing leaders like Ernie Cray and your colleague Ellis Ross, who are just being driven crazy by this. Stephanie, you worked as a Minister of Children and Families. You had a lot of interaction with First Nations leaders, because unfortunately that's a major part of that ministry. Ernie Cray, Ellis Ross, other progressive leaders see this as a way to generate economic benefits, jobs, work, money, wealth, in order to bring crucial services, not nice to have services, crucial services to these people, to their peoples. How are we fighting this based, this myth that First Nations oppose it? That to me frustrates me the most.
I think it's a really an injustice that we're seeing, because the reality is that there are people across this province that understand the need for responsible development and responsible projects, and that our economy is dependent on these things, and our economy, and a strong economy, is what provides the opportunity for people to provide for their families, for government through everybody's tax dollars to provide the services, the daycare and all these other things that people want. And those are good things. We want to do those, but we can't do them without the income to spend on it. The money doesn't grow on a magic tree somewhere.
Well, and the interesting thing about the pipeline is that every single First Nations territory that's intersected by the pipeline has signed an agreement with Kinder Morgan. And there are some First Nations who don't support the pipeline, but they don't live anywhere near the pipeline. Yeah. They're just First Nations leaders who popped up and said, hey, every First Nation in the province doesn't support this pipeline. It's not true. More First Nations support it than oppose it.
Yeah, and if you're working in media, I don't know why you'd be watching this, but if you're working in media, especially outside of British Columbia, and you're propagating this myth that First Nations oppose this pipeline, that is factually disproven and incorrect. And it's nonsense. I was listening to At Issue coming in, their podcast from the CBC National, and there's this throwaway comment that First Nations oppose it. They don't. Many, many, many of them support the project. Chris, we were at a news conference yesterday. 75 business, union, municipal groups signing on to an open letter talking about the crisis of confidence, confidenceincanada.ca. Maybe talk about that.
Yeah, really this is the business community across not only British Columbia, but there were now the list is growing. As of yesterday, we had over 75 organizations sign on. We're going to be at 100 by the end of today. And it's organizations from British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, the Maritimes, all recognizing that this is about a pipeline and a project that was approved and should move forward. But it's also about issues that are fundamental to Canadian Confederation that don't involve a pipeline, and that's why so many businesses are standing up and saying we've got to get shovels in the ground. This project has to move ahead. So it was a great event. I think it got very good coverage in the media, but it's significant because the business community is galvanizing around this issue and saying, listen, there are thousands and thousands of companies that can be part of the supply chain, hundreds of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses. It's not just big companies that are going to be involved. And if you are in construction and you're a welder, a gas fitter, an electrician, a truck driver, there are opportunities for training and for career advancement when you have $7.5 billion being invested in your economy.
Well, and I think it's even bigger than that. And I think it is about this project, but it's about the fact that we need to know, or we need to ensure that businesses and investors, whether they be provincial, whether they be from another province, whether they be from another country, have the confidence that they know that if they follow the rules and they go through the process and they get an approval, that they can build their project, or they can build their business, or they can sell their product, or whatever it might be. And when something like this happens, that confidence is eroded, and people don't know, is this a safe place to invest time and energy and potentially money to build a business or to build a project, and that all of those things employ British Columbians, and to see that confidence wane and is really concerning. Yeah,
it builds on the Lana Popham fish farm debacle at the very beginning of the term, and yeah, there's a lot going on in that. Anything else on?
No, I would just say, listen, to Stephanie's point, it's a great point. Unfortunately, in Canada, we've got a reputation as too difficult to do business. It costs too much, too complicated, it's too confusing. We're losing opportunities, as the CEO of the Royal Bank of Canada said. We've got to change this narrative, or our long-term prosperity is going to be at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Life in opposition, obviously, you're experiencing for the first time. What's it like, and kind of what's the mood of the caucus, and how are things coming together under Andrew Wilkinson?
Well, it is different for sure. My schedule is much more my own now.
You have time
I have
to
time
visit
to
us.
breathe, and I have time to have lunch. But it's different, but it's important. It's a different role to assume and to change the way you think about. Oh, I've got to drive this project or drive this piece of legislation versus, oh, okay, well, how do I criticize constructively where necessary, and how do I still work cooperatively where necessary to get things that are important done for my community? So it's a learning curve for sure, but it's good. Our mood is great. We have such a strong team. We have such great people, great minds from just so many different aspects of business and community and professions, and so we're a strong team, and we've rallied really well together under our new leader, Andrew Wilkinson. Everybody, I think, is energized and ready to be there and doing our job for British Columbia.
I thought this week was your strongest in the housing question period. You guys seem to be finding your feet, and it's been really exciting to see that. So it's not an easy job for sure. As a former tax fighter, knowing what the critiquing governments are like. Big news out of Surrey. I'm here with two key longtime figures in Surrey politics. Chris Gardner, who masterminded the first Diane Watts mayoralty campaign and the birth of Surrey First. Of course, Cadieux, Surrey South MLA. I live in Langley, so we like to joke around that, because Surrey's slogan is that the future lives here. We live next door to the future in Langley. It's very exciting for us. But Linda Hepner announced today, the mayor of Surrey, yesterday, that she will not run for re-election. Joining, I think, a list of 9 Metro Vancouver mayors who are on their way out the door. This is big because her slate, Surrey First, does control all 9 seats on council. Mm-hmm. Under their constitution, those 9 people decide who will be the mayoralty candidate going forward. Stephanie, what are you hearing on the ground there in Surrey South?
Well, I think first, I think it's important to recognize that people make decisions not to run for lots of reasons, and certainly for Linda. Linda's had a long career with the city, both as a bureaucrat and as an elected official, and she's served the city very well for a very long time, and I think we need to thank her for that service. But beyond that, it's liable to be very different. The environment for municipal elections has changed, just like the provincial rules have changed a bit. That's going to change how things play out. We've had a number of groups sort of out and announcing that they're going to run a slate of candidates. Some groups that are newly emerging, and then of course, with Mayor Hepner saying she isn't going to run again, that of course leaves a spot open for a mayor candidate from Surrey First, and I expect that with that we'll see some new candidates for council as well on a variety of slates, and I know there are a number of people that have already said, both from within Surrey First and others, that they're interested in running. So I think it's going to be a very different year and different election in Surrey.
Yeah. No hankering to go into municipal politics.
Well, that shorter commute is nice. That'd be nice.
Right. Chris, Bruce Hayne, Tom Gill, I think Mike Starchuk is talking about it. I think everyone on the slate's talking about it. My theory is that all 9 of them will vote for themselves, and then Linda will just break the tie.
Well, listen, there
inside
is,
track.
Well, I think what's interesting in Surrey is that the free enterprise aligned councillors have had majority on that council since 1991. And the left of center organized political entities have been fairly weak, certainly in the last, since 2005. They've been very weak, and they haven't had a representative on council, really. The Surrey First Coalition is fairly broad in nature. You've got candidates there who would come from the left side of the spectrum, but nonetheless, when you have the mayor saying they're not going to run for re-election, that does raise questions about whether or not there's an opportunity for others to fill that void. That being said, Surrey First is well organized. They've got all of they hold all the elected seats on council, so it's going to be very, very challenging for some to unseat them. So in all likelihood, the next mayor is probably going to come from within the Surrey First fold. And so some of the names you mentioned have all come out publicly and said they're going to put their hat in the ring. It's a small ring, because only 9 people can vote. But it'll be interesting to see who emerges. This is really then the way it's set up. It's really going to be about the personal relationships that those individuals have with their 8 colleagues.
I do have a theory about public life and leadership in general, and it revolves around social media shortening the lifespans of mayors and premiers and leaders of parties. I think the era of 10, 12, 15 years as a party leader or a premier or a mayor are over. I think social media is going to contract people down to 2 terms generally, because it becomes such a weight, right? Like there's so much more ways to criticize you, and then you end up maybe falling into the traps of what that means. Is that, am I out to lunch on that, or do you think we're into this kind of world where people are going to serve shorter times in order to?
Well, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. I think there's probably some arguments that is a good thing. That people that stay around too long, get used to their own decisions and forget that the world has happened around them and things have changed. So I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that the whole rise of social media is changing the conversation, is changing how people are perceived, rightly or wrongly, with fake news or sort of providing an echo chamber for certain points of view, and providing an opportunity for some really unfair or uninformed criticism to emerge and seem credible. Yeah. So I think that that's going to be challenging for people to overcome, and I think that people who are successful, politicians who are successful over time, are going to need to be even more wary of their of being authentic. Yeah. And I think that's going to be really, really important. And that authenticity is going to have to show through all of the mediums.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the underreported trends on Facebook are the smaller neighborhood groups that pop up. Mm-hmm. In South Surrey Langley, of course, lots of those kind of enclosed developments. So, I'm part of, I live in a place called Milner Heights. There's a Milner Heights Facebook group, and politicians can't get into them because they're closed groups to the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But it just takes one activist within that neighborhood to kind of poison the narrative about a mayor or about a council.
Or conversely, support someone.
Yes, exactly. And that's the challenge, right? For someone like me who, reads the stuff and I know it's factually incorrect, it's incumbent upon me to comment on it and to, correct it and gently kind of nudge the conversation away from what's going on. So, so if you're in the neighborhood group, do your part.
Yeah, well, I think that is important. I think the reality is we're having to, I think we all as users and receivers or consumers of information are going to have to be more and more diligent about making sure the information we're receiving and believing is factual, and that we sort of don't just believe everything we read on first blush.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last topic, the new Patullo Bridge. We're excited there's going to be a new Patullo Bridge. Mm-hmm. We are not excited that it's going to be union-only built, tilting the playing field to about 15% of the construction workforce. Yeah.
Well, I think as a Surrey resident, I say, yay, there's a new Patullo Bridge. I say, really, it's only 4 lanes. Yeah. I don't think we're building for the future when we are thinking that is going to be sufficient. And it concerns me that the government has announced that they're going to pay for it entirely, because that takes a whole lot of room out of the capital budget for other provincial priorities, like a Massey Tunnel replacement, which we desperately need, that's been cancelled. Yeah. And so that's a concern. And it's a concern, I think, anytime that there are that it's issued that, or decreed that it shall be only available for these folks to bid on, because we need the competitive process. We need the ability of all of our British Columbian and other companies to be able to bid and say, we can do that job for the best value. And we need the best value because we want to make sure that we're not spending money we don't need to, because that money can be spent in so many other ways.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's no doubt that when Premier Horgan says that Patullo Bridge was built with only a unionized workforce, there's going to be a couple of losers in that equation. One is the taxpayers of British Columbia, because costs are going to increase. Two is the men and women in construction who aren't members of unions, which the unions that support Premier John Horgan and the NDP, it's about 15% of the construction workforce. So 85% of the construction workforce is going to be shut out of building the Patullo Bridge. That's not good politics, it's not good policy, and it's going to hurt taxpayers.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes. However, I will say this about the old Patullo Bridge. If we could get 85 years of use out of every piece of government infrastructure,
wouldn't that be great?
Oh my gosh, we'd be rich. We could slash taxes in half. All right. Well, that's it for us. Thanks for listening to the ICBA cast. We will be back soon. Probably some breaking news next week. Chris and I, are you in on Monday, Chris? You're in on Monday? We're going to, we'll do something after the big Sunday summit. Horgan, Notley, Trudeau.
Let's hope something comes out.
Boy, that's going to be a heck of a room. Okay, so stay tuned for that and other content through the week. ICBA.ca, at ICBABC on Twitter, Facebook.com/the ICBA. You can follow Stephanie on Facebook, Facebook.com/Stephanie.Cadieux.73.
Oh, no, Stephanie Cadieux.
Okay, Stephanie Cadieux, never mind. Yep. There you go, follow her there. And on Twitter, at Stephanie4BC. So, yeah, that's right.
Great.
Okay, good. Thanks for watching, and take care, everyone.
Have a good weekend.